Well, hello everybody, and welcome to step 3 of the Growth Track. And I want to let you know we are so glad that you are here today because what you are doing is so very important. And I want to make sure that all of you have the Growth Track booklet that you've been given. And if you don't have one, let the host know, and we'd be happy to help you with that. And I want to remind all of us that what we are doing here and why we're doing this is our church has a vision for you to take a spiritual journey that we believe God has had in His heart for you to take, all the way from the beginning of time. And I mean, we can find it as early as the book of Exodus, and it goes all throughout the Old Testament and all even throughout the New Testament that God has always wanted people to have a relationship with Him. We call it know God. And then you have to take some steps to settle your yesterdays, the things in your past, and we call that find freedom. And then we want you to discover your purpose, because every person was born on purpose for a purpose. So you're not here by accident. You are here to exist. You are not here to just exist or to survive. You are here to actually do something with your life that matters. And I really believe with all my heart that the highest level of living and the highest level of doing life is where you actually make a difference. In fact, sociologists say that the highest level of fulfillment in a person's heart is when they lay their head down at night knowing that they did something that changed other people's lives. So we call it around here, know God, find freedom, discover purpose, and make a difference. This is God's plan for your life. Now, each of these 4 steps that God has for us is we have a system that we are using to actually deliver it. Primarily, people are meeting and knowing God or getting closer to God through our worship experiences. And then primarily, people are finding freedom through our small groups that we have all throughout our church in the community. And I hope every one of you have found a group. If you're not in one, you need to find a group, because if there's work that can be done, that's where that's going to happen. In small groups is where we're going to work through our issues, because we all have issues. And making sure that you talk about those, because there's going to be something that I've learned in this process is you'll always be as sick as your secrets. So you need to get into a group. And then the Growth Track delivers the third part, which right here we're in, which is discovering your purpose. And then hopefully you'll end up in the final phase of this journey where you're making a difference. And that happens through our dream team, through our volunteers. So Growth Track has 4 steps. In week 1 is for you to be connected to a local body of believers. And we gave our version. It's kind of our version of church membership, if you will. And I want to say that if you're contemplating making Skybreak your home church, that I would say give us a year. Give us a year of your life to commit to diving deep. And I know that if you do this with all of your heart and all throughout, I believe if you do it with everything in you, that your life will be changed forever. And if not, then you need to find yourself a local church to be a part of, to go dive into where you can do just the same. Now in step 2, we talked about the fact that we have a design, that God has given us a God-given design. So when we were created, God gave us a divine design for your life. And in the Bible, it says in Ephesians, to each one of us, a grace gift has been given. That means there is something that you are automatically going to be motivated to do, something that you are wired to do, where you're wired that way. And we think that the more you look into a person's design, the more that will reveal their destiny. So that's why we talk about this through our spiritual gifts profile and our personality profile test, so you can discover the unique design and unique wiring that you have. Now today we're going to give you the third step in the development of your purpose, and I'm going to start by reading in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. It says, God has given each of you a gift, and hopefully you've discovered that gift last week, but it says from His great variety of spiritual gifts. You see, you're all going to be wired and motivated in a different way. Now, I've done this for quite some time, and I know this, that where some people have some hang-ups because usually they'll say, well, I'm not ready, or here's how they'll say, God is still working on me. And most people look for reasons to disqualify themselves from leadership. But I'm convinced that many have the wrong definition of leadership. So I want to dismantle that myth right away. Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. So the reality is everyone is a leader. Even people who don't know God are leaders, because everybody is influencing someone else in some kind of way, and it's about influencing others in a worthwhile cause. That's why we believe this is all about. This is what leadership is about. It's not dependent on titles or positions or even what you think are these just natural abilities. Don't limit yourself on natural abilities. It is dependent on people discovering their gifts and passions. Again, hopefully you did that last week, and then you're using those gifts to make a difference in the lives of others in your world. For myself, I am absolutely terrified of public speaking. I know it may not seem that way because I do this all the time, but I am absolutely terrified of it. You see me doing it now, but what you don't know is the years and moments that lead up to every public speaking engagement that I have the opportunity to be a part of. The things that I have to go through in myself and in my mind to get in the right mind frame. I had to come to the grips with the fact that this statement here, and maybe this is something you can apply to your life, that my passion must override my fear. You see, my passion is to see people capture the extraordinary life that God has for them. And the thing that helps me every time is a few statements that I actually speak over myself. And I actually have a specific prayer that I pray. I say things like, God, I am called. I am anointed. I am appointed to do this. God, you chose me and you called me for such a time as this, that I am a vessel to be used by you, God. And you see, I want that same passion to rise up in you, so that way you can make a difference in the circle of influence that God has given you. Because I will tell you that there is no greater joy and there's no greater fulfillment than when you know that you're living out your God-given purpose. You see, if you look through Scripture, you'll notice that people were used by God, and the people that God uses, He never uses those who are actually talented. He never uses the ones who had it all together, and He certainly never used the ones who were perfect people. He always looked for people with issues. And I think He did this on purpose. He looked for the most imperfect people and said, let me use you. Let me use that stutterer or murderer Moses. Let me use the guy who killed Christians, Paul, who went on to write 2/3 of the New Testament. Now, why would God choose an adulterer to be a king as King David? Why would He do that? You see, He's trying to show you that no matter who you are, no matter what your current resume is, that He can use you to influence other people if you allow Him into your life. So there are some things that I believe that stand in the way, and I want to make sure that we get it over at the start before we start developing our leadership. And I want to use Moses as an example because Moses had this horrible view of himself. If you know the story, he was raised Hebrew, but in the house of Pharaoh, an Egyptian, and when all that was discovered, he went into exile on the backside of a desert for 40 years. And of course, he had this burning bush encounter with God. And that's where we pick up the story in Exodus chapter 3. And this bush is burning, and God's saying to Moses, hey, I've got plans. I'm going to use you to be a leader. And you're going to bring all the Israelites out of Egypt. And Moses said to God, who am I? I think you picked the wrong guy, and then that I should be the one to go to Pharaoh to bring the Israelites out of Egypt. And God said, and this is a very key phrase, He says, I'll be with you. So don't measure yourself by how you see you. Measure yourself by how actually God sees you. You can't just look through your lens or how you're seeing yourself. You've got to look through the lens of how God sees you. So the next following verse, Moses comes up with 4 excuses. This is what he said. He said, who am I? And that's because he had insecurities. So I want you to write that down. Who am I? You see, we all have insecurities. You can't live with your insecurities, though. The second thing is, he says in this text, is in Exodus chapter 3 and 4, he says, write this down, what if they? So that was his second excuse. And he had this issue with fear. So what if they laugh at me? What if my friends mock me? What if they? What if they? And honestly, there are a lot of you that are keeping yourself from God's best for your life because you're considering more about what other people think of you all the time. So let's make this very practical. Some of you pray, but you can't pray in a restaurant because you are there and what are people going to think? And the thing is, we must decide to do this not to be led by the fear of man. Proverbs 29 says, the fear of man will prove to be a snare, a trap. But those who trust the Lord, it says, will be kept safe. So I'm not there to make a show in the restaurant, but I am certainly not going to deny my God. And I'm not going to live with fear of any man. You see, we can't be measured by that. And some of you need to overcome the fear of people. If you're going to fear something, fear God. And have this healthy respect for God. That's what it means to fear God. And we're all going to have to stand before God one day, not man, to give an account. That's what the Bible tells us. You see, the third statement that he said, the third excuse that Moses made was, I have never. So that's the third one. So write that down. So when you're asked by God to do something that you've never done before, I'm going to tell you something. God is famous for doing that, especially in my life. God is famous for calling you to something that you've never done because he's always going to require you to take some kind of leap of faith, to take a risk. This is what he does. And that every day we need to be on our knees asking God for help. So God is notorious for asking you to do something that you've never done before to keep you dependent on him. And this is very, very important. Then the fourth thing that he said, the fourth excuse, Moses, this was kind of his last-ditch effort to not have God use him what he's calling to do. And this is what he said. Write this down. Why don't you use somebody else? Can you find somebody else? And I want you to write this word down, reluctance. Because I'm convinced that there will be some of you today that you're going to get this and believe this, but you're not going to necessarily be ready. So you think to take the next step. And I want to convince you. I want to convince you this, that you and your life will never make sense until you're doing something with your life that really makes a difference. So here's what the devil will do to make sure that you don't do it. And I'm going to tell you this so you know how to look out for it. And that is, he will try to keep you from the call that is on your life, that purpose that's on your life, that influence that's on your life. He'll do it by two things. He's either going to give you a lot of stuff and make that a distraction, or he'll give you a lot of problems and he'll make that a distraction. Sometimes a blessing isn't always a blessing. You see, it would either be possessions or problems. You see, some people he blesses a lot, so they won't ever do anything significant for God, and he'll give them so many things, so many toys, so many dreams to play. And let me tell you, and it's the devil. You think it's God's blessing, but it's actually the enemy trying to make sure that you never follow through with God's plan for your life. For others, it's the opposite. They say, well, I can't do anything by myself because I have so many problems and I have to fix all of this first. But though a lot of those, let me tell you, a lot of those things are not about those things. But both of those things are things that the enemy actually tries to put in the way to keep us from serving God. 1 Peter chapter 2 tells us, says, you are a chosen generation. I want you to know that today. A chosen generation, chosen by God as a royal priesthood. In other words, he calls you into ministry. You are a minister. And you've got to see that. You're like, well, I'm not up there preaching. I ain't doing all that. No, God says you are a minister. You are a holy nation. You are his own special people. That's why you are here. You are here with your life to influence others for Jesus. And as you proclaim the praises of him who's called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That's what the Bible says. And we want to encourage you that whatever is standing in the way, I want you to, by faith, take a step beyond it and realize that there is leadership and there is influence inside of you. And once you live it out, you're going to find the joy in that God's always intended for your life. Now I want to give you what a leader looks like, because it's not about titles and it's not about positions or abilities. We believe that here as a church and all of our staff. We don't strive for titles at all. And I know that there are some things that you may get involved in. For example, if you want to be on the worship team and play a guitar, then you're going to have to know how to play a guitar. And I realize that there are some abilities needed, but for the most part, what qualifies a leader are not abilities. What qualifies a leader are qualities. An amazing leadership verse in the Bible is out of the story of Daniel. Daniel and all the Hebrews were brought into exile into Babylon, which is this modern day Iraq, part of the geography world right now. And they were brought into what is called Babylon, and Daniel had these qualities. Honestly, these were because he was wealthy, he had an education. The Babylonian king actually brought him into the palace to serve there, and that's why. Now, he's serving this guy, a king named Darius, and it says that it pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps. Now, that just means leaders, like mayors and people to serve. And it says throughout the kingdom, there's 3 administrators over all the other leaders, and one of those was Daniel. So here's this Hebrew, non-Babylonian person that was incredible in leadership. And that's what Darius said. He said, I'll put you in charge of all these people. Now, I want you to watch this. It says the satraps were made accountable to these 3 guys, and one of them was Daniel, so that the king wouldn't suffer loss. So the kingdom would grow and be successful, basically. In verse 3, it says, now Daniel, he says that he distinguished himself. Now let me stop right there and say this. He wasn't distinguishing. He didn't have natural distinguishing abilities. He decided to distinguish himself. And I want to say to all of you here today that are with me and those that are watching, that you have the ability, by the grace of God, to distinguish yourself. You can do some things that make yourself stand out among a crowd. And Daniel didn't distinguish himself among the administrators by his abilities. No, but by his exceptional qualities. You see, some translations use the words as excellent spirit. He just had a different spirit about him. And I want you to watch what happened, what the king said. He says, if you're going to be that way, then Daniel, he said, I'll just give you the whole thing then. If that's how you're going to be, then I'm going to let you be the leader and lead at a level that is even beyond the plans that I had for you. You see, you need to embrace having an excellent spirit. We call these staff values, and I believe that these are now in the Grow Track because if you become a member of our Dream Team and volunteering, you are a member of the staff. You become a member of our team, and you need to embrace these qualities as well. And these qualities are not what qualify you. So let me give you to them. Let me give them to you. And every one of you, every one of these, every one of them are huge. Every single one of them that you can actually do. The first one is that we are to love God. I want you to write that down. First one is love God. That's what we do. We love God. In other words, we realize that ministry is an overflow of my love relationship with God. The number one gift that the staff and Dream Team give me is not what they do. It's not that you minister kids and Skybreak kids, or you park a car, or you play a guitar, or you run a camera. The number one gift that you can give the church is your service. And your service is the fact that you love God and your love for God. And let me tell you why. Because it spills over. It's contagious. People want it. People's lives are not changed because you handed them a bulletin right away when they came in. People's lives are changed because they encountered someone who's just madly in love with God, and it made them want to love God too. And that's why the highest, biggest priority of our leadership is that I spend time with God. I've been with God, and now I've done it at a level where it is overflowing in my life and in other people's lives. And I want to show you an awesome verse, and it's also in Acts chapter 4. Jesus has just been resurrected, and now the church is being the church. And it says in Acts 4:13, it says, when they saw the courage of Peter and John, they realized that they were unschooled, that they were ordinary men. By the way, the Greek word for that is idiots, just so you know. It's where we get the English word idiots. It's called idiotes. It means idiots. They were just fishermen with no education. So the crowds saying, my God, look at what these men are doing. They're a bunch of idiots. They're just some fishermen. This is what they were saying. They don't know anything, and they were astonished. Why? It's because they had been with Jesus, and it was overflowing. And what I'm trying to show you is that what marked those disciples was not their natural abilities. It was the fact that they were so close to Jesus that everybody wanted what they had. So as leaders, next week we're going to be determining, and over the next, in step 4, the team that you might serve on, we're going to do even some of that today. And what you do on this team is extremely important, whatever the function is. But the function isn't the most important thing. Your relationship with God and your love for God is the most important thing. And I need you to bring that love onto your Dream Team function. Now, how do I do that? Well, let me give you 3 things. All these things I want to give you. And I want to give you quality, and I want to give you 3 ways to live this out. The first is this, that I want you to develop your closeness with God. Develop your closeness with God. So let me say it this way. Wherever you are in your current relationship with God, always strive to be closer. That I'm going to spend time in prayer. I'm going to make those daily appointments with God, and I'm going to keep them. The second thing is, write this down, is develop our character. In other words, I'm going to ask the Holy Spirit to point out parts of my life that grieve him. Here's how the psalmist David prayed, and this is what he said. He said, search me, know me, show me a place that offends you, and lead me in the way of everlasting. So I have character flaws, but I need the Holy Spirit to work on those. Now, I'll never achieve perfect holy perfection, but I'm always asking God God's will to work on my life, to work on those characteristic issues and I want to get them out of my life because those things will actually keep me from my fullest potential. And the third thing is this, write this down. Develop your calling. So whatever it is that you do, develop it. I constantly work on my communicating, and I hope you guys can tell that, but I look back over 10 years of my speaking at old sermons and messages that I've done, and I am embarrassed by my speaking back then. I'm like, oh God, why would you have entrusted me, Pastor Danny, with speaking? And I like to think that I'm growing in this, but what you don't know is that I listen to several sermons a week. I'll go back and I watch several sermons, and not just for the content of the sermon, but to say, oh, that was a great way to communicate that or to say that. Oh, I love the way he told that story. You see, I'm studying my craft as well when I do that. I don't care what your craft is on the dream team or what it ends up being, but what people who love God what they do is they ask God to develop the call that's on their life. You see, here's the second value that we embrace as leaders is we love people. So we love God, but we also have to love people. That is what we do. We love people. We know we love God, but we are not just in the God business. We are also in the people business. Now, some of you are people, like you do this naturally. In fact, probably one of these 4 qualities is going to be really, really easy for you. It's like, all right, move on to the next one. I got that, but I'm going to tell you, there are some of those that this is going to be tough for us, and we're going to have to work on it. And I'll just tell you, this is at the top of the 4 that I have to work on most. You see, I'm laser focused on mission person. That's me. I walk into a room and I see things that need to be done. I'm unaware of it, but I'm aware of it, but I've asked God to actually work on my people skills, because when I walk into a room, I half the time don't see people. I just see what needs to be done. But you see, Jesus said, he called together his disciples and his leadership and his dream team, and he said this, you know that those who are regarded as leaders or rulers of the Gentiles, they lord over them. In other words, they just bark out orders, and their high officials exercise authority over them. So in other words, they are there to just be in charge. I want you to watch what Jesus says in this, because this is huge. He says, not so with you. So this is what they do, but not so with you, disciples and dream team and volunteers. We don't treat people like that. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be a servant. We put service over status. So even the Son of Man, he did not come to be served, but to serve. He gave his life. You see, that's what dream teamers do. That's the culture we are trying to put inside of every one of you, is to be a servant to everyone. So I want you to put this in the first blank. Be a servant. I want you to write that in. Be a servant. That we walk into every environment that we are leading and serving on a dream team, whether it's the nursery or the parking lot or on the stage or a small group, whatever it is, and we are there for one reason, and that is to allow the love of God to spill over into people's lives and then find out a way that we need and to serve them. You see, the second thing is we're going to be a team player. Write that down. Team player. We create a culture of valuing not only those who are serving, but other teammates we're serving with. So we build unity. That's what we do. That's who we are. And the last thing is to be real. Write that down. Be real. Be honest. Be transparent. To me, one of the greatest people qualities is sincerity. This is the real me. And just be yourself. Be who God's called you to be. And the third quality that we're going to develop as leaders is the quality that we pursue excellence. That we are going to fight to maintain a level that honors God. That's who we are. It says in Mark chapter 7 that people were overwhelmed with amazement because of everything that Jesus did. He did it well. This value of excellence is what we want you to own as well. And let me give you some ways that you can do that. Whatever you do, I want you to do it well. So whatever you put your hands to, do that well. Just do things well. We would rather you do fewer things, but do them very well. Second thing is, do them before you're asked. To me, one of the greatest leadership qualities is the quality of initiative. Just take initiative. More people, let me tell you this, more people have ended up on staff here at Skybreak because they didn't wait to be asked to do it. They just did it. Then they start doing it so much then I can't afford not to have them and for them not to do that. So we hired them on, and because we wouldn't want them doing anything else. And it is an important value. It's what excellence people do. They do it before they're asked. Sometimes when you take steps of initiative that you didn't plan on, God will actually elevate you and promote you to the places you would have never dreamed of that you would be. And I'm not waiting for people to tell me what to do. If I see a piece of paper or a piece of trash in the parking lot, I'm not going to wait for the maintenance guy to pick it up. No, I'm going to pick it up because I'm going to live a life that's excellence. I'm not going to wait for people or someone to tell me what to do. And the last one is do more than that's expected of you. You see, Jesus calls this going the second mile or the extra mile in Scripture. You see, if someone, he said it this way, if someone asks for your coat, also give them your cloak. So always do more than expected. Jesus taught us this. It is a value that we as leaders must embrace. So how do you influence? It's not because you're all that in a bag of chips. No, it's that I've been with Jesus. I love people, and if I'm going to put it in, if you're going to put it, and if I'm going to put my hand to it, I'm going to do it with excellence. And here's the last one. This is a big one, and that is that we choose joy. Write that down. We choose joy. And I want you to also write this word down: attitude. Attitude. This is the X factor. I think attitude can get you further than anything else. And here's where attitude matters the most. It is when you don't feel like it, when you don't have a reason for it. How do you have a good attitude? And there's three things. First thing is be enjoyable. Just be enjoyable. Take responsibility for the atmosphere in the room. Be positive. In other words, the answer is always yes. You see, dream teamers, when you're serving people, you face a problem or dilemma, but figure out the solution. I tell our staff, don't bring me a problem without already thinking through a solution for that problem. You see, it creates this can do, whatever it takes. All things are possible because of our God kind of attitude. So that's what I'm asking you to do. The last one is this: be loyal. Be loyal. That I go through hard times with you, and I don't bail on you because I have the right attitude. I chose to be with you. God's called me to be under that leadership. You see, I want to be open and give you a short thought for you because, and then we're going to get into how you're going to get a chance to choose a different ministry opportunities based on your interests and your passions and your abilities and all those things that you love to do. But one thing in your booklet that's so important is called the Leadership Honor Code. And when you read this, it looks like it's hard to live by. And it seems like we are asking a lot. But what we are saying is, as leaders, we're going to strive to not only do what's right in the eyes of God, but also in the eyes of men. This means I'm going to have to make some decisions of how I'm going to live my life, knowing that people are watching you. Whether you believe it or not, people are watching you. That is why we think it is important at this place to agree to this honor code. And agreeing to the honor code doesn't mean you're going to get the honor code right all the time, because if that were the case, I couldn't be a leader here either. I don't get this honor code right all the time, but I'm striving toward it all the time. And I want to live my life in a way that is an example to others, and which is why we ask you, do you agree to this honor code? We aren't asking, have you lived this way and are you living this way? But what we are saying, by the grace of God, is I'm going to strive for this to be my goal. That I'm going to refrain from profanity and smoking and tobacco and gambling and indulging in too much alcohol or wine and dishonest gain, drugs, pornography. And all these things that are on this list, we are saying that as leaders, we are called to a level that people are watching us. So if you're ready, you can go ahead and sign it saying that you're ready to be a part of this honor code and you're going to take this as something that you're striving to do. And also you'll notice that we want you to connect with a dream team leader in an area that you choose. So if you want to be a part of small groups or the worship team or the media team, youth and kids ministry or a guest experience, it is that at that point that they will actually take you on a journey in training and leadership for the area that you chose. And some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. It'll take several months to get on stage if you want to be a part of the worship team, playing an instrument or singing. But you may be next week, you end up serving in other areas like the guest experience with greeting or hosting or ushering people. But that's up to the area of that area to decide. But you will connect to a leader and with a leader, and there'll be a process that goes through from this class to a more personal journey. And you see, you can't always develop in groups. At some point, you're going to have to do a one-on-one, and you're going to do training in person, and that's what that's going to be for. And then step 4 in the growth track is the goal that allows you to serve others with all of your heart. And honestly, here's what we want. That one day, when we stand before God, here's the thing. He's going to ask us 2 questions. The first question is this: what did you do with my son Jesus? And the answer you're going to want to give is something like, I gave him my life. He is my best friend. I loved him. We were in relationship together. And God is going to want to hear some sort of relationship question. And then God's going to invite you into heaven, because only Jesus can get you into heaven. We believe that here very strongly. And then God will want to reward you and reward us for those who got into heaven, according to the what's called the judgment seat of Christ. It's the other judgment for those that are in heaven. And this question will be something like this: what did you do with all the ability and talent and time and all that I gave you? What did you do with it? And all of you will want to say something to the fact like, Lord, look, everything that you gave me, I try to make it the most of it to influence others. And Jesus will say, well done, my good and faithful servant. And you see, I want everyone here to live for the well done moment. That you're living for one thing, and that's to walk in front of God one day and hear him say, well done, my good and faithful servant. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the page where the leader declaration is, and we're going to read this declaration very strong and out loud together. So I want you to read this together. Go ahead and go to the declaration page. I'll give you just a second. Again, we're going to read it out loud, read it all together. You can read it along with me, kind of stay in tune with me. It says this: because God has called me to serve my generation, I will value worship over wealth, we over me, character over comfort, service over status, and God's purposes over possessions, positions, popularity, and pleasure. To my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I say, however, whenever, wherever, and whatever you ask me to do, my answer in advance is yes. Wherever you lead me and whatever the cost, I'm ready anytime, anywhere. I want to be used by you in such a way that on that final day, I'll hear you say, well done, good and faithful servant. Come on in and let the eternal party begin. Amen. Well, I want to thank you for being a part of this today. This is so important that you jump into this process and continue to stay through this. You've made it through all 3 steps if you've done this in order. If this is your first day, I'm glad you're a part. Well, the host is going to join back in here in just a second, and they're going to give you some final instructions. But I want to say we love you so much. We're so thankful for you being a part of this church. It's going to be so much better with you a part, and with you a part of this dream team and what we're doing and what God's called us to do in this community. Well, your host is going to jump back in, and we'll see you soon.